We're an indie studio. We're about 20 people strong. We've worked with Creative Europe a number of times to make self-serving, irreverently epic indie titles. My attention was drawn to Creative Europe back in, I guess it would have been 2014, 2015. It would have been one of the earliest years that it was being offered. We had just released a game called Schrodinger's Cat and the Raiders of the Lost Quark. We made this game, we released it, it did fairly well for itself, and then this Creative Europe, it became, it entered our forefront, it entered our line of vision as a fund that was specifically geared toward developing narrative video games. We're the only company in the country of Northern Ireland that had a release that fit under that criteria. And so at that time, we're like, this is great. This is, it's good for reputation. It's good for clarity, and it'll be good for just being able to develop. If we can get our hands on the funding that's available, it means that we've got a little bit of creative freedom, a little bit of developmental freedom. So we went for it. We went for it with a game called Mona Lisa. That was successful. So we got our first Creative Europe grant. I guess that would have been 2015. Since then, I'd like to say that we've been lucky enough to get it 2 more times. We seem to hit the right nerves of exactly the sort of thing that Creative Europe likes. And we've been lucky enough to partake of their funds over the past 6 years to help grow the business. I would say that the key word is like developmental freedom, creative freedom. It's not something that a lot of early indies get a chance to experience, because as you start off as a company, I mean, obviously, yeah, you need a track record, you need to be eligible, that sort of thing. You need to have a game out the door. But that's a risk reducer. But you can still be an early company that doesn't know what game 2 is going to look like. So in a situation like this, we put forward a pitch that had, some quirky narrative and some interesting gameplay and some stuff that not even we had worked out exactly how to do yet. And by having Creative Europe look at that, see value in it, and say, yes, we're going to put some money toward it. It was the most money that we had received for a development project to that date. We had the ability and the time to mess with mechanics and not be forced down a road forced down a path out of desperation. Desperation and budget was not driving what we were putting together at the time. And it meant that we could come up with something that was either much more innovative or much more fulfilling, spend more time on the narrative, and not be always, not always have the whip at our back. It's very easy as a small studio to get wrapped up in doing nothing but applying for more funds. And usually the funds that are at your fingertips are, 10 grand, 20 grand, 50 grand if you're lucky. And then for this Creative Europe to be available to offer up to 150,000 euro, of course, with match funding, makes it a huge developmental prototype budget, allows you to explore paths you never would have had access to or the time to explore before. And also it's I'd say the reputation. It has been amazing to have, to be able to say we're 2-time winners, now 3-time winners of this award in the realm of narrative-driven video games. Knowing that Creative Europe had put their faith in us to deliver on a few projects, gave others the impetus to put money in our direction as well in order to make things real. It just gave a reputation and a clout that we were worth investing in. And really, once you've got somebody saying that guy's worth money, others follow. It's getting the first that makes the second and third come down the line. The art of narrative-driven video games is something that is very easy to fall by the wayside in the current market. I would say that any investors are looking for the quick wins. They're drifting toward mobile, free-to-play, hyper-casual, and story goes by the wayside. But it's almost as though Creative Europe has kept in the forefront of their investments that games are an art form and games are a storytelling medium, and they're pushing to promote those, not at the expense of profit, but knowing that they are a less profitable form of game than the easy pickings of something that you can wrap a free-to-play wrapper around. I think it's really important that that something like the narrative game doesn't end up being this weird, obscure niche thing that sits off to the side that people hack away at with their own labor of love, because all traditional investors and arts council funds and things like that are leaning towards the low risk, high reward. As a company that focuses on writing and quirky characters and snappy dialogue and that sort of a thing, this Creative Europe Fund really was made for us in early development, and we've been glad to have been so close to it and to have received it these few times. A lot of us are in this industry because not to be the huge money makers. The indie audience tends to go into games because they want to make an impact and they want to tell a story. They want to make people feel the feels. They want to do something in a medium that's not film and not animation and lets people live the story. The loss of Creative Europe is going to leave a gap. I suppose I have to hope that that the reputation that we've been able to establish working on the previous projects gives us enough clout to be able to pull them from, say, more traditional sources, or as in, VCs, angel investors, publishers, things like that. The UK and Northern Ireland especially are a whole industry full of creative people that want to tell stories. And we need those funds to get those stories off the ground.